What's up guys, my name is Ace, and in Modern Warfare 2019, my favorite game mode, and in fact the only game mode that I really consistently enjoyed in that game, was Ground War. And thankfully, it has been confirmed that Ground War is returning for Modern Warfare 2, and with that, I thought it would be interesting to just share my Ground War wish list this time around. Some improvements and additions that I'd love to see based on the Modern Warfare Ground War mode. Before we get into that though, let's just quickly recap what has been officially confirmed when it comes to Ground War in Modern Warfare 2. Keeping in mind this is coming from an early media presentation I was fortunate enough to attend just before the official reveal trailer dropped for the game. First up, instead of just having Ground War maps where you just play that one Ground War mode where it's like a large-scale domination with 5 flags, now they're actually calling these maps battle maps, as opposed to the core maps, which are 6v6. These battle maps are designed from the ground up for this large-scale experience, including the traditional Ground War mode that we're used to with Modern Warfare 2019, but they also mentioned there would be other modes. Now, the devs didn't go into any detail as to what the other modes would look like within these battle maps. However, there has been a leak for a mode called Ground War Bomb, so that implies there's some sort of bomb objective rather than just a flag objective, but that's really all we know as far as game modes go at this point. Now, when it comes to maps, they revealed 2 maps to us. One was called Said, and with this one, they described it as having intense urban combat. So lots of buildings, lots of tight corridors, lots of platforming as well, so you can get on rooftops and in any one of the buildings. And then the other one that they revealed is called Seraph Bay. And this one takes place in a tourist fishing village, and they describe this as a water playground, because keep in mind, we will have access to swimming in Modern Warfare 2 as one of the mechanics. So there's going to be boats, there's going to be swimming, and that's all going to be integrated within this map. Now finally, one last thing that I got from the presentation is they did mention these maps were designed specifically for Ground War and the Ground War style modes, unlike with Modern Warfare 2019, where at least a lot of the Ground War modes, they just sort of carved out chunks of the already existing Verdansk map for Battle Royale, and then they would just call them Ground War maps. So this is great news, and it's actually one of the big things that was on my wish list. Out of all the Ground War maps that we have, there's only a small handful that I really thoroughly enjoy, and then there's a bunch that I just feel shouldn't be Ground War maps at all. Like Promenade, for instance, I generally don't like playing it, even though you might be seeing some gameplay of it in the background. I generally don't like playing Promenade, and the same thing goes with the Riverside one. I really didn't like that as a Ground War map either. It just didn't play or flow very well, in my opinion, compared to something like Karst River Quarry, which I feel is an excellent Ground War map. And with all that out of the way, now let's get into the wish list I've got here for some improvements that I'd like to see. And the first one's really simple. I'd love to see the spotting mechanic available in Ground War for Modern Warfare 2. This is something that is perfectly suited to these larger scale experiences, especially like if you see a sniper on a ridge, for instance, it would be great to be able to just mark that sniper for your teammates, or even just for your squad mates. They could make spotting only available between squad mates rather than the entire team in order to keep it in check, so there's at least some ability to have some stealth as well, because I think stealth is important to some degree, but some form of a spotting mechanic would be very welcome. Next, I wanted to share a few game modes that I would love to see in these battle maps, because that's a big area where I feel like Modern Warfare's Ground War was really lacking. I really wanted to try playing those maps in totally unique and different ways, but we only really ever had access to that 5-flag domination style mode. So some of these modes that I'd love to see a rush style mode from Battlefield, where you have like 2 bomb locations, and you have one team that's the attacking team, the other team that's the defending team. And if the attacking team is able to destroy both bomb sites within a time limit, then they move on, the defending team has to fall back, attacking team moves on to the next set of bomb sites, and you just continue your way all the way through the map until you get to the final bomb sites, or until the defenders hold off the attackers and the time limit runs out. Additionally, I'd love to see an escorting style mode similar to the payload mode that we saw within Warzone. However, I'd prefer to see this with multiplayer mechanics, not Warzone mechanics. So no looting, no armor, no buy stations, nothing like that. Just a standard sort of escorting mode that takes place on these battle maps. I think a VIP mode could also be really interesting, where you could select a player at random from each team, or maybe even multiple players at any given time, give them a Juggernaut suit, and then maybe a pistol or something to use, something not overly powerful so they can't just defend themselves, and then you have to try to kill the enemy team's VIP while trying to keep your VIP alive. So you have to balance that attacking versus defending. I think that could also be an excellent mode. So those are just a few ideas. There's plenty of other ideas out there that could easily work. I just want to see a good variety of game modes on these battle maps. Additionally on my wish list, let's move a little bit outside of the gameplay itself. When it comes to ground war or battle modes, I'd love to have a separate tab for create a class. That way I can keep my standard core 6v6 classes. I don't have to touch them every time I move over to the battle modes. I can have those separated because the classes are likely to be a little bit different between the modes. There's always a bunch of things that I would change on my classes when moving between 6v6 and ground war in Modern Warfare, and I'd rather not have to do that. I'd like to keep that stuff separate. And speaking of separation between battle and core, I'd love to see separate stat tracking and perhaps even no kill death ratio stat whatsoever just for these battle modes. So still keep all of our stats for 6v6 the way that they've always been, so you can track your kill death ratio and all that kind of stuff. That's important to a lot of people. But one thing I missed from COD World War II was the war mode and the fact that kill death ratio didn't count in that mode. So that's a place I felt a lot more relaxed, and also I felt much more inclined to want to play the objective because it didn't matter if I died as long as I pushed that objective a little bit further for the team. Whereas when you track kill death ratio, at least for a lot of players, it could be that thing that prevents them from jumping on that objective when it's needed the most. Now, I will admit I'm a little bit torn on this area. I still feel like the stats at the very least should be separate between battle and core, but I'm a bit torn as to whether or not we should track kill death ratio, because I do realize for a lot of people, they love having that stat available. They love being able to track their improvement over time and just see how they're performing overall in relation to the rest of the community. So I'm not necessarily dead set on having no kill death ratio tracking. I just wanted to bring that up as maybe an option, and I'd love to hear what you guys think about that down below. Would you support having no kill death ratio tracking in ground war, or do you feel like it should still track? And then if it does, should that be separate from your core stats, or should they just all be integrated into one stat in your combat record? Next up on my wish list, this is actually something I hope remains the same with Modern Warfare 2, because I've been seeing a lot of people in the past call for this. I really don't want to see Warzone specific mechanics like armor and looting in the battle maps. I've seen a lot of people ask for this, and personally I'd love to see some solid separation between Warzone and Warzone game modes compared to the multiplayer game modes. I want a nice consistent time to kill that's the same between core 6v6 and ground war multiplayer, and I don't want to have to bother with looting and buy stations and things like that. I want the ground war experience to still feel like multiplayer at its core, still have the same sort of mechanics in place, but just in a more large-scale environment with different styles of objectives and engagements that you'll be running into. The same thing goes with kill streaks. I do want to see kill streaks available in ground war or these battle modes. However, I just really hope we don't have a white phosphorus style streak. I don't want to see something that significantly hampers visibility for everyone on the map, while also damaging anybody that goes outside, so kind of just forcing everybody to stay inside. I really hate white phosphorus in Modern Warfare, especially in ground war, even if it's my team that's calling it in. Now, finally for my wish list for ground war in Modern Warfare 2, I hope we have some better vehicle balance. I know the power of vehicles in Modern Warfare's ground war really depended on the map that you were playing, but on certain maps and in certain areas, the vehicles were a little ridiculous and they just broke the flow up with the match way too much. They were simply too powerful in my opinion. They had infinite ammo, not really much of a cooldown at all between shots, and unless you were using a dedicated class that's just designed for taking out vehicles, they could get pretty annoying to take out, especially if you couldn't close that distance and get a throwable piece of equipment like a thermite on those vehicles. And since the devs have confirmed that we are going to have the ability to repair vehicles, at least in Warzone, but I assume also in ground war, I hope everything's compensated for properly and vehicles aren't the best way to play the game. My favorite times playing ground war in Modern Warfare have been on the Boots on the Ground playlist where there were no tanks or APCs on the map. And so I just really hope that the overall gameplay design is much more focused around infantry combat, where the vehicles maybe complement infantry combat and provide a different way to play without them sort of taking over and completely disrupting the flow of the match, and in some areas maybe even being way too powerful. And with that, that's going to wrap it up for my Modern Warfare 2 ground war wish list. Honestly, it's not a really long list because I really like most of what Modern Warfare 2019 did with ground war, and I don't really want to see too many significant changes there. I think they really nailed it in so many areas, and I want so much of it to stay essentially the same. Now, of course, that's just my wish list. This is where I want to hear from you guys in those comments down below. What's your ground war wish list for Modern Warfare 2? Are there any significant changes or additions you'd like to see from Modern Warfare's Ground War? If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.